Hello, my dear survivors. Welcome back to another night where we sit with the weight of what's been lost and try to understand the pattern beneath it all. Tonight, we're tracing every major death in The Walking Dead, from the farm to the Commonwealth, from the first losses to the final sacrifices, and everything those empty chairs have been trying to tell us. Death in this world was never random. It just felt that way at first. But the more you look at who died and when and why, the more you start to see something deliberate, a lesson being taught season after season about hope, about leadership, about the cost of staying alive when everyone around you is gone. So tonight, we're going to walk through them all. The ones who hesitated, the ones who hoped, the ones who found peace and paid for it, and we'll try to understand what their deaths reveal about survival, about the people who made it, and about the ghosts they carry at that council table. There's no rush, no urgency, just us, the quiet glow of memory, and the steady recognition that every loss meant something, even when it broke us. So settle in, get comfortable, and let's honor the ones who didn't make it by understanding what they left behind. There's a moment in the season 11 finale that I keep coming back to. The camera pans across Alexandria's council table, rebuilt, scarred by fire and time, but still standing. And the chairs around it are occupied by new faces: Judith, Aaron, Gabriel, people who survived. But if you look closely, you'll notice the empty spaces. The seats where Glenn used to sit, where Abraham would lean back and crack a joke, where Sasha would weigh in with quiet strategy, where Tara would smile and nod. They're not physically empty. People are using them now, but they feel empty because the council table is a graveyard of memories, each chair a marker for someone who didn't make it. And I started wondering, what if every major death in The Walking Dead wasn't random? What if there's a pattern underneath all the loss, a logic to who dies and when and why? What if the show's been teaching us season by season exactly what survival costs, and we've been watching it unfold one empty chair at a time? Tonight, let's trace that pattern together. Let's look at every major death, from the farm to the Commonwealth, and see what they reveal about hope, leadership, and the weight of staying alive. In the beginning, death felt random. Back in season 1, when the group was still figuring out the rules, people died because they hesitated, because they trusted, because they didn't understand how brutal the new world was. Jim gets bitten during the Walker attack on the quarry camp in season 1, episode 4, and the group leaves him under a tree to die because there's no cure, no hope, just the slow turning. Amy dies in the same attack, shot in the head by her sister Andrea before she can fully turn, and it's the first time we see someone have to kill a loved one. It's intimate, devastating, and it sets the tone for everything that follows. Jackie chooses to stay in the CDC when it explodes in the season 1 finale, deciding that death is preferable to surviving in the world outside. And these deaths feel almost gentle compared to what comes later, because the group doesn't know yet what survival really requires. They're still holding on to the old world's rules, still believing that if they're careful, if they're good, they'll make it through. Sophia's death in season 2, episode 7, Pretty Much Dead Already, is the first betrayal of hope. The group spends half the season searching for Carol's daughter, lost in the woods, and everyone believes they'll find her. They have to believe it. Because if they can't save a little girl, what's the point of surviving? And then Herschel's barn opens, and Sophia stumbles out as a walker, and Rick has to shoot her. It's not dramatic. It's just sad. This quiet confirmation that hope is dangerous, that searching for the lost will only break you. Carol doesn't scream. She just collapses, and you can see the part of her that believed in rescue die right there. Sophia's death teaches the group that the apocalypse doesn't care about innocence, doesn't care about who deserves to survive. It just takes, and you either accept that or you break. Shane's death in season 2's finale is different. It's not walkers. It's not chance. It's Rick stabbing his best friend in a field because Shane's become too dangerous, too unstable, too willing to kill to get what he wants. And Shane turns, and Carl shoots him. And suddenly, survival isn't about the walkers anymore. It's about each other. It's about the choices you make when someone you love becomes a threat. Rick kills Shane to protect Lori, to protect Carl, to protect the group. But he also kills him because Shane represents what Rick could become if he stops caring about morality, if he lets survival erase everything else. And that pattern, killing your own to save the group, it's the foundation of every leadership decision Rick makes from that point forward. The early deaths aren't random, they're lessons. Hesitation kills you, hope betrays you, and sometimes survival means putting down the people you love before they drag you down with them. That's the cost the group learns on the farm, and it's a cost they'll keep paying for the next 10 years. The prison in season 3 feels like salvation at first. Walls, cells, space to breathe. But the deaths there are different, more targeted, more cruel. Lori dies in season 3, episode 4, Killer Within, giving birth to Judith in a boiler room while walkers pour through the prison yard. Maggie has to perform an emergency C-section with a knife. No anesthesia, no time. And Lori tells Carl, "You're going to be fine. You are going to beat this world." And then she dies, and Carl has to shoot her before she turns, and Rick doesn't even get to say goodbye. He just comes back to find Carl holding Judith, and the look on Rick's face, empty, shattered, is the look of a man who's just realized that leadership means losing the people you're trying to protect. Lori's death isn't about Lori. It's about what it costs Rick to keep the group alive, the way survival takes pieces of you until there's almost nothing left. T-Dog dies in the same episode, bitten while helping Carol escape. He's been part of the group since season 1, steady and loyal, and his death barely registers because it happens so fast, so quietly. He sacrifices himself, and the group moves on, because that's what you do. Axel dies in season 3, episode 10, shot in the head by the governor during an attack on the prison, and his death is sudden, shocking, a reminder that safety is always temporary. He was just a guy trying to flirt with Carol, trying to find a place in the group, and then he's gone. The prison deaths feel expendable in a way the farm deaths didn't, like the show's teaching us that once you have walls and structure, individual lives matter less. You become resources, bodies to defend the community, and when you die, you're mourned briefly and then replaced. Andrea's death in the season 3 finale is the most frustrating. She's been trying to broker peace between the prison and Woodbury, trying to believe the governor can be reasoned with, and it gets her killed. She's bitten by Milton after the governor leaves them both to die, and she has just enough time to say goodbye to Rick and Michonne before she shoots herself. "I tried," she says, and it's both true and heartbreaking because trying wasn't enough. The governor didn't want peace. He wanted control. And Andrea's idealism, her belief that people could still be talked down, still be saved, was the thing that killed her. It's a pattern we'll see again and again. Idealists die, pragmatists survive. And then there's Herschel. Season 4, episode 8, Too Far Gone. The governor holds him hostage, uses him as leverage to try to force Rick to abandon the prison, and Rick tries to negotiate. He offers to share the prison, to live together, to find a way forward, and the governor responds by pulling out Michonne's katana and beheading Herschel in front of everyone. Maggie and Beth scream. Rick charges, the prison falls, and Herschel's death is the moment the moral center of the show is cut away. He was the one who believed in mercy, in second chances, in holding on to your humanity, even when the world's trying to take it. And the governor kills him specifically because he represents that. He kills hope. Not just a person. The prison deaths aren't about individuals. They're about breaking the group's emotional anchors. showing them that the things they believe in, family, mercy, hope, are liabilities, and every loss makes them harder, colder, more willing to do whatever it takes to survive. The empty chairs at the table start to pile up, and the people left sitting in them are the ones who've learned to live with the weight. After the prison falls, the group scatters, and the deaths on the road feel more personal, more brutal. Lizzie's death in season 4, episode 14, The Grove, is one of the hardest to watch. She's a child, maybe 10 years old, and she's been damaged by the apocalypse in a way that can't be fixed. She believes walkers are just different, that they're not really dead, and she kills her little sister Mika to prove it. Carol finds her standing over Mika's body, smiling, saying, "Don't worry, she'll come back." And Carol realizes Lizzie's a danger to Judith, to everyone, and there's no prison to lock her in, no institution to help her. So Carol takes her outside, tells her to look at the flowers, and shoots her. "Look at the flowers, Lizzie," she says, and it's an act of mercy and horror at the same time. Carol's not a murderer. She's a mother doing what she has to do to protect the children who can be saved. But the cost of that choice, the weight of killing a little girl, it never leaves her. You can see it in every season after. The way Carol hardens, the way she stops hesitating, because she's already done the worst thing imaginable and survived it. Bob dies in season 5, episode 3, after being bitten and kidnapped by the Terminus survivors. They eat his leg while he's still alive, and when the group rescues him, he tells them he was bitten before they took him, that the Terminus people ate infected meat. He laughs about it, this small, final act of defiance, and then he says goodbye to Sasha, tells her the world's going to keep going, and he dies. Bob was the group's optimist, the one who kept saying things would get better, and the show punishes him for it. His optimism is literally poisoned, consumed, turned into a weapon against the people who hurt him. It's darkly poetic, and it reinforces the pattern. Hope is dangerous, happiness makes you a target. Beth's death in season 5, episode 8, is the one that breaks Daryl. She's been kidnapped, held in Grady Memorial Hospital by cops who run the place like a dictatorship. The group negotiates her release, and it's supposed to work. It's supposed to be simple. But Beth, defiant and brave, stabs Officer Dawn with scissors in a final act of resistance, and Dawn reflexively shoots her in the head. Daryl immediately kills Dawn, but Beth's already gone. He carries her body out, and the look on his face, empty, destroyed, is the same look Rick had after Lori. It's the look of someone who's just lost the one thing that made them believe survival was worth it. Beth represented innocence, hope, the belief that kindness still mattered. And the show kills her for it. Teaches Daryl and the audience that defiance gets you killed, that even small acts of resistance can cost everything. Tyrese dies in season 5, episode 9, bitten while trying to protect Noah, who dies horribly 5 episodes later anyway. Tyrese was the group's conscience, the one who struggled with violence, who wanted to be good in a world that punished goodness. And he dies hallucinating conversations with the people he's lost, Bob, Lizzie, Mika, the governor, all of them telling him it's okay to let go. It's better now, they say. And Tyrese dies believing that his death is mercy. And it's tragic, because the show's telling us that people like Tyrese, people who try to hold on to their humanity, don't survive. They're too soft, too kind, too broken by the weight of what survival requires. The road deaths in season 4 and 5 aren't about walkers. They're about the cost of character traits. Hope kills Bob. Innocence kills Beth. Mercy kills Tyrese. And the people who survive Rick, Daryl, Carol, are the ones who've learned to bury those traits, to become harder, colder, more willing to do the unthinkable. The empty chairs multiply, and the people left standing are the ones who've learned that trust, hope, and mercy are luxuries they can't afford. Alexandria in season 5 and 6 feels like a test. Can the group integrate into a place that looks normal, that has walls and electricity and people who haven't been brutalized by the outside world? And the answer, over and over, is that normalcy is fragile, easily shattered. Noah dies in season 5, episode 14, Spend, in one of the most brutal death scenes in the series. He's trapped in a revolving door with Glenn and Nicholas. Walker's pressing in, and Nicholas panics and pushes through, which causes Noah's side to open. The Walkers drag Noah out and tear him apart while Glenn watches, helpless, inches away. It's not heroic. It's not meaningful. It's just horrific. A reminder that death in this world is ugly and random and doesn't care about your arc or your potential. Noah was going to be an architect, was going to help rebuild, and he dies screaming, ripped apart because Nicholas was a coward. Reg and Deanna die during the season 5 finale when Pete, drunk, abusive, unraveling, kills Reg with Michonne's katana during a town meeting. Rick executes Pete immediately after, and Deanna, watching her husband bleed out, realizes that Rick was right about everything. Alexandria's innocence shatters in that moment. The illusion that they could stay safe without becoming harder, without making the choices Rick's group has been making for years. Denise dies in season 6, episode 14, shot through the eye with a crossbow bolt by Dwight while she's in the middle of a speech about being brave, about facing fear. It's sudden, shocking, meant to hurt, and it does. Denise was a doctor, a healer, someone trying to be useful, and she dies mid-sentence, her words cut off, her potential wasted. And then there's Glenn and Abraham in season 7, episode 1, The Day Will Come When You Won't Be. Negan's introduction is a performance, a spectacle designed to break Rick and the group. He lines them up, plays Eeny, Meeny, Miny, Mo with Lucille, and bashes Abraham's head in. Abraham sits up straight, defiant, and takes it, and Rosita watches, and the group is silent, shaking. And then Daryl punches Negan, and Negan says, "No exceptions," and kills Glenn. Right there, in front of Maggie, who's pregnant with Glenn's child. Glenn's last words are, "Maggie, I'll find you." And then his skull's crushed, and the group is broken. These deaths aren't random, they're calculated. Negan doesn't just kill, he breaks people with deaths. He turns murder into theater, into a lesson about control and submission. And it works. Rick's spirit is shattered. The group falls in line. And for half of season 7, they live under Negan's rule. Terrified. Obedient. Because they've learned that defiance costs the people you love. The pattern's clear now. Deaths aren't about survival. They're about control. About teaching the group that hope, defiance, and resistance get people killed. And the empty chairs at the table aren't just losses. They're warnings. The war against the saviors in seasons 7 and 8 is brutal, and the deaths during that time feel different, more like sacrifices than murders. Sasha dies in the season 7 finale by taking a suicide pill and turning into a walker inside a coffin Negan's using to transport her. She volunteers for it, knowing she'll die, knowing she'll become a weapon against the saviors when the coffin opens and she attacks. It's agency. Maybe the only kind left to her after watching Abraham die, after being captured and tortured. Sasha's death is her choice, and that matters. It's not random. It's not cruel. It's her deciding that her death can still mean something, can still help the people she loves. And when Negan opens that coffin and Walker Sasha lunges at him, it's chaos, and the group uses that chaos to fight back. Her death is a sacrifice, and it's honored as such. Carl's death in season 8, episode 9, is the most important death in the entire series. He's bitten while helping Sadiq, a stranger he found in the woods, because Carl believed in his father's vision of a better world, believed that helping people was still worth the risk. And he hides the bite for days, fights in the war, writes letters to everyone he loves, and then reveals it when it's too late. He tells Rick, it can't just be about killing the dead and killing the living. It has to be more than that, or we're just waiting for our turn. And then he dies, and Rick's mission changes. Carl's death redefines everything. It's why Rick spares Negan. It's why the communities try to rebuild. It's why the show shifts from pure survival to the question of what survival is for. Carl dies from mercy, from helping a stranger, and instead of punishing that choice, the show elevates it. His death becomes the moral center, the thing everyone's trying to live up to. Eric, Aaron's husband, dies during the war, shot during a battle, and Aaron finds his body turned already a walker. Tobin dies during the Season 8 attack on Alexandria, and countless Alexandrians, Hilltop residents, and Kingdom fighters are lost in the chaos. These deaths aren't given names or arcs. They're just numbers, the cost of war, the people who die so the main characters can survive. And that's part of the pattern too. The show kills secondary characters to remind you that survival is expensive, that every victory requires bodies, that the people sitting at the council table are sitting there because hundreds of others didn't make it. The war deaths are sacrifices. They're not random or cruel. They're people choosing to fight, choosing to risk everything for a chance at something better. And some of them make it, and some of them don't. And the ones who survive carry the weight of everyone who didn't. Carl's death is the turning point. After that, the deaths mean something different. They're not just about survival. They're about whether survival is worth it, whether the world can be something other than endless violence. And Carl's answer, written in his letters, is that it has to be more than this. Or what's the point? The Whisperers in seasons 9 and 10 bring a new kind of horror, and their signature atrocity is the pikes. Season 9, episode 15, The Calm Before, ends with Alpha leading Daryl and a few others to a field where she's planted 10 pikes, each one topped with the severed head of someone the group loved. Tara, who was leading Hilltop. Enid, who'd grown from a traumatized teenager into a skilled doctor. Henry, Carol, and Ezekiel's adopted son. And 7 others, Tammy Rose, Rodney, Addie, DJ, Frankie, Ozzy, Alec, people we knew, people who mattered. Alpha doesn't kill them for resources or revenge. She kills them to send a message. Stay on your side of the border, or more will die. It's terrorism, designed to fracture the communities, to make them too afraid to unite, to isolate them in grief and fear. Siddiq survives the massacre because Alpha makes him watch. She spares him specifically so he can go back and tell the story, so he can traumatize the communities with the details of how their people died. And Siddiq does. He tells them that their people fought back, that they tried to protect each other, that they were brave. But it doesn't matter. The trauma breaks him. He has PTSD, nightmares, panic attacks. And in season 10, episode 7, he's murdered by Dante, a Whisperer spy embedded in Alexandria. Because Siddiq was starting to figure out who Dante really was, Siddiq's death is quiet, intimate, a hand over his mouth in the basement, and it's devastating because he survived the pikes only to die months later from the aftermath. The pike deaths aren't just about the people who died. They're about the people who survived, the ones who have to live with the images, the fear, the knowledge that anyone could be next. Alpha's strategy is psychological. She doesn't need to kill everyone. She just needs to kill enough people to make the rest too afraid to resist. And it works for a while. The communities isolate. Michonne closes Alexandria's gates. Carol becomes obsessed with revenge. Ezekiel spirals into depression. The kingdom falls apart, literally. The infrastructure collapsing because there aren't enough people left to maintain it. The Whisperer's toll isn't measured in bodies. It's measured in fractured relationships, broken trust, the slow erosion of hope. The Pike deaths are designed to make survival feel pointless, to make the communities wonder if they're just prolonging the inevitable. And for a while, it almost works. The empty chairs at the table multiply, and the people left sitting there are too traumatized to figure out how to fill them. Alpha doesn't kill hope by offering a better alternative. She kills it by making the cost of resistance unbearable. By season 7, the show's pattern becomes obvious. Major deaths cluster around mid-season and season finales. Glenn and Abraham die in the season 7 premiere. Carl dies in the season 8 mid-season premiere. The Pikes happen in the season 9 penultimate episode. It's not random. It's a formula, a narrative tool the showrunners use to create tension and stakes at key moments. And once you see the pattern, you start to notice the other one. The show kills characters who find peace. Bob finds love with Sasha and dies. Tyrese makes peace with violence and dies. Beth finds purpose and dies. Carl writes letters about hope and dies. It's almost like happiness is a death sentence. Like the moment a character says, "I'm happy now," or "this is good," they're marked. The theory here is that deaths follow narrative utility, not randomness. Characters die when their arcs are complete, when their death will have maximum emotional impact, or when the show needs to raise the stakes. Herschel dies to show how brutal the governor is. Glenn dies to break Rick. Carl dies to redefine the mission. The Pikes die to establish the Whisperers as a threat. Every major death serves a purpose, moves the plot forward, teaches the audience something about the cost of survival. And once you understand that, you can almost predict who's going to die next. Look for the character who's found peace, who's talking about the future, who's finally happy. Look for the emotional anchor the show wants to break. Look for the mid-season or season finale. That's when they'll strike. That's when someone you love will end up in an empty chair. The pattern's not cruel. It's just storytelling. The show needs stakes, needs to remind you that no one's safe, that survival is always fragile, but it's also exhausting. Because you start to pull away, start to not get attached, because you know that caring about someone is setting yourself up for heartbreak. The show's trained us to expect loss, to see the death flags, to recognize when a character's arc is about to close. And maybe that's the point. Maybe the show is teaching us the same lesson it's teaching the characters. Don't get comfortable. Don't hope too much. Don't let yourself believe that things can stay good. Because in The Walking Dead, happiness is the most dangerous thing you can feel. And if you find peace, you're already dead. You just don't know it yet. Character arcs in The Walking Dead often end in death, and there's a predictable structure to it. The character finds purpose, expresses hope or happiness, and then dies within a few episodes. Bob talks about how the glass is half full, finds love with Sasha, and dies. Tyrese makes peace with his inability to kill, says he's okay with who he is, and dies. Sasha tells Maggie she's ready to fight for the future, and dies. Carl writes letters about building something better, expresses hope for peace, and dies. It's not subtle. The show has the formula happiness equals death, and once you see it, you can't unsee it. Redemption arcs follow a similar pattern, except when they don't. Shane's arc ends in death. He tries to kill Rick, becomes too dangerous, and Rick puts him down. Merle, Daryl's brother, spends season 3 trying to redeem himself, turns against the governor to save Daryl and the group, and dies in the process. He goes out fighting, taking out several of the governor's men before he's shot and left to turn. Daryl finds him as a walker and has to put him down. And it's one of the most emotional moments in the series because Merle's death is a sacrifice, an attempt to make up for years of cruelty. The pattern suggests that redemption requires death, that you can't atone for the past and survive. Except Negan breaks that pattern. Negan kills Glenn and Abraham, terrorizes the communities for 2 seasons, and by all rights should die at the end of the war. But Carl's letter asks Rick to spare him, to show mercy, to prove that the future can be different. So Rick slits Negan's throat, but not deep enough to kill. He lets him live, imprisoned, And Negan spends the next several seasons in a cell, reflecting, changing, slowly becoming something other than a monster. And he survives. He's still alive in the spin-offs, still trying to figure out who he is now that he's not the leader of the Saviors. Negan's arc subverts the redemption equals death formula, and it's one of the most interesting choices the show makes. It suggests that maybe, just maybe, people can change and survive, but Negan's also isolated, exiled, never fully forgiven. His survival is its own kind of punishment. The theory here is that The Walking Dead kills hope to sustain tension. If characters were allowed to be happy, to find peace, to build something lasting, the show would lose its edge. Survival would stop feeling precarious. So the show punishes happiness, makes hope dangerous, teaches the audience that caring about someone is a setup for loss. It's effective storytelling, but it's also bleak. Because after a while, you stop hoping for happy endings. You stop believing characters can find peace. You just wait for the death, for the moment when the show reminds you that in this world, happiness is a luxury no one gets to keep. And maybe that's the point. Maybe the show's not about hope. It's about endurance, about surviving even when survival feels pointless. And the characters who make it aren't the ones who hope. They're the ones who've learned to live without it. The Commonwealth arc in season 11 brings new deaths, and they feel different, more political, more calculated. Lance Hornsby, the Commonwealth's deputy governor, is killed in the latter half of season 11 after trying to take over Alexandria, Hilltop, and Oceanside. He's not a warrior. He's a bureaucrat, someone who believes in control through systems, through manipulation, and he dies not in a dramatic battle, but quietly shot by Carol after he's already lost. His death is efficient, necessary, the removal of a threat, and it's almost anticlimactic, which feels intentional. The show's saying that not every death needs to be a spectacle. Sometimes people just die because they're in the way. Rosita's death in the season 11 finale is the opposite. Devastating, emotional, earned. She's bitten during the Commonwealth riots, during the chaos of revolution, while protecting her daughter Coco. She hides the bite, helps get everyone to safety, makes sure Coco's okay, and then tells Eugene and Gabriel they stay with her, hold her, let her see Coco one last time before she dies. And Rosita, who's been with the group since season 4, who's been a fighter and a friend and a mother, dies quietly, surrounded by people who love her. Her death is the cost of revolution. The Commonwealth is reformed, the oppressive systems dismantled, but Rosita doesn't get to see it. She dies so her daughter can grow up in a better world. Luke, a minor character from season 9, dies off-screen sometime during the final season. We don't see it. We're just told he's gone. And that choice, killing a secondary character off-screen, denying him a dramatic death, reinforces the pattern that not everyone matters equally. Main characters get emotional, death scenes, speeches, closure. Secondary characters just disappear. It's brutal and honest, a reminder that most people in this world don't get heroic endings, they just die, and the story moves on without them. The Commonwealth deaths are sparing but devastating. The show's not trying to shock you anymore. It's trying to make you feel the weight of every loss, the cumulative grief of a decade of survival, and Rosita's death, more than any other in the final season, carries that weight. She's a survivor, someone who's made it through everything, and she dies protecting the next generation. It's a fitting end, and it's heartbreaking, and it's the show reminding us one last time that survival is always expensive, that the people who make it to the end are often not the ones who get to enjoy what they fought for. Rick and Michonne survive, but their survival is complicated. Rick dies in season 9, episode 5, blown up on a bridge, trying to save everyone from a herd, except he doesn't die. He's extracted by the CRM, the Civic Republic military, a massive authoritarian organization that's been operating in the shadows, and for 6 years, everyone believes he's dead. Michonne leaves in Season 10, Episode 13, after finding evidence that Rick's alive, his boots, marked with a drawing of her and Judith. She doesn't tell Judith and RJ where she's going. She just leaves, following the faintest trail, hoping to find him. And in The Ones Who Live, we see what happened. Rick's been held by the CRM, forced to serve as a soldier, trying to escape but unable to because the CRM threatens Alexandria. Michonne finds him, and together they destroy the CRM's leadership and escape. The theory here is that protagonists survive by leaving the main story. Rick doesn't die on the bridge because he's extracted, removed from the show, kept alive in a spin-off. Michonne survives because she leaves Alexandria, because she's no longer part of the central narrative. Their survival is conditional on their absence, on their exile from the family they're trying to protect. And that's tragic because they're alive, but they're not home. They're out there fighting a shadow war, missing their children's lives because they believe it's the only way to keep them safe. Survival for Rick and Michonne looks like exile. It looks like sacrifice without the release of death, the burden of staying alive when everyone you love thinks you're gone. And maybe that's the cruelest survival of all. Not dying means carrying the weight of everyone who did. It means living with the choices you made, the people you couldn't save, the cost of staying alive. Rick and Michonne survive because they're the protagonists, because the story needs them, but they survive by becoming ghosts to their own family, by choosing duty over presence, by accepting that protection means distance. The empty chairs at the table aren't just for the dead, they're for the people who are alive but gone, whose survival cost them everything they were fighting for. And that's the pattern, isn't it? The Walking Dead doesn't kill everyone. But it makes survival so expensive, so isolating, so full of loss, that sometimes death feels like the easier option. And the people who survive, they're the ones strong enough or broken enough to keep going anyway. The show's leadership deaths reveal a pattern. Moral centers die, pragmatists survive. Herschel, the group's conscience, is beheaded by the governor. Glenn, who tried to save everyone, is killed by Negan. Carl, who believed in mercy and hope, is bitten helping a stranger. Rosita, who fought for a better world, is bitten during the revolution. These are the people who believed survival had to mean something more than just staying alive, who tried to hold on to their humanity, who made choices based on hope rather than fear, and the show kills them for it, one by one, until the people left standing are the ones who've learned to make the hard calls, the brutal choices, the decisions that prioritize survival over morality. Rick survives because he's willing to kill Shane, to execute Pete, to bite out Joe's throat, to become whatever he needs to be to protect his people. Daryl survives because he's loyal and ruthless, because he doesn't hesitate, because he's learned that mercy gets people killed. Carol survives because she's willing to do things others won't: kill a child, burn people alive, lie and manipulate and sacrifice her own humanity for the group's safety. Maggie survives because she becomes hard, pragmatic, willing to lead even when it costs her everything she loves. These are the survivors. People who've buried their idealism, who've learned that hope is a luxury, who've accepted that leadership means making choices that haunt you forever. The theory here is that The Walking Dead punishes idealism and rewards ruthlessness. It's not that the show believes hope is weakness. Carl's letters, after all, redefine the mission, but it does suggest that idealists don't survive unless they're protected by pragmatists. Carl lives as long as he does because Rick's willing to do the things Carl can't. Herschel survives until the governor kills him because the group defends him. Glenn makes it to season 7 because Maggie and the others cover his moments of mercy. Idealists need pragmatists to survive, and when the pragmatists fail, the idealists die. And the question the show raises quietly through every leadership death is, does this mean hope is weak? Does this mean survival requires cruelty? Or does it mean that the people who hold on to hope are the bravest because they're choosing something harder than survival? They're choosing meaning. The show doesn't answer. It just shows you the empty chairs and lets you decide. The survivors carry the weight of everyone who didn't make it. Maggie carries Glenn's death in every choice she makes. Every moment she hesitates before trusting someone new. She named her son Herschel after her father, carries the legacy of two men who believed in mercy and paid for it with their lives. And she's harder now, less willing to forgive, less willing to hope, because she's learned that the people you love die when you let your guard down. Maggie's survival is a testament to how much loss a person can endure and still keep going, but it's also a portrait of grief calcified into armor. She survives by not letting anyone close enough to hurt her again. Daryl carries Beth, Glenn, everyone. He's the show's most loyal character, the one who never leaves, who never stops protecting the people he loves, and every loss breaks him a little more. When Beth dies, he carries her body out of the hospital, and for a while, he stops talking, stops engaging, just exists in the weight of it. When Glenn dies, Daryl blames himself because he punched Negan and Negan killed Glenn in retaliation. And Daryl carries that guilt for seasons, isolates himself, punishes himself because survival feels like a betrayal when everyone you loved is gone. Daryl's still alive in the spin-offs, still fighting, but he's alone. He's left Alexandria, gone to France, searching for something he can't name. And maybe what he's searching for is a way to live with the weight, or maybe he's just running from it, trying to outpace the ghosts that follow him everywhere. Carol's survival is the most complicated. She's killed more people than almost anyone else in the group, children, friends, enemies. She burned Karen and David alive to stop the spread of illness at the prison. She shot Lizzie to protect Judith. She massacred Terminus to save the group. She's ruthless, efficient, willing to do whatever it takes, and she survives because of that ruthlessness, because she doesn't hesitate. But the cost is visible in every scene. Carol's haunted, carrying the weight of every choice, every life taken, every line crossed. She tries to leave, to run away from the group, to live quietly somewhere else. But she always comes back because the alternative, being alone with the weight, is worse than carrying it with people who understand. The theory here is simple and devastating. Survival means carrying the weight of everyone who didn't make it. The empty chairs at the table aren't empty. They're filled with ghosts, with memories, with the faces of people who died so the survivors could live. And the people sitting at that table, Maggie, Daryl, Carol, Judith, they're not just survivors. They're the ones strong enough to carry the dead with them, to live with the guilt and grief and weight of every loss. They're the ones who've learned that survival isn't about forgetting. It's about carrying. And every day they wake up, every day they keep going. They're honoring the dead by refusing to join them. But that doesn't make it easier. It just makes it possible. And sometimes that's all survival is. The choice to keep going, even when the weight feels unbearable. Even when the empty chairs outnumber the filled ones. Even when you're not sure why you're still here. You just are. And so you carry the final generation, Judith, RJ, Coco, are growing up in a world shaped by ghosts. Judith wears Carl's hat, carries Rick's gun, knows the stories of her father and brother, but she's never met them. She's being raised by Daryl, Carol, Aaron, people who loved Rick and are trying to pass on his legacy, but a legacy isn't the same as a parent. Judith's strong, capable, wise beyond her years, but she's also lonely. She's growing up in the shadow of people she'll never know, trying to live up to a standard set by ghosts. And that's a weight no child should carry, but in The Walking Dead, it's the only inheritance left. RJ's even more disconnected. He doesn't remember Rick or Michonne. He just knows they're out there somewhere fighting to keep him safe. And maybe that's a comfort, or maybe it's just another kind of loss, having parents who are alive but absent, who chose the mission over being there. The show's final season ends with Judith and RJ living in Alexandria, surrounded by people who love them, but also surrounded by empty chairs, by the weight of everyone who came before. And the question the show raises is, what kind of world are they inheriting? Is it better than the one Rick and Glenn and Herschel fought for? Or is it just the same cycle, the same endless struggle, the same pattern of loss and survival? Daryl, Carol, and Maggie are still alive, still fighting in the spin-offs, but they're not the same people who started this journey in season 1. They're harder, lonelier, more broken. Daryl's in France, protecting a boy he barely knows, searching for a purpose that isn't grief. Carol's following him because she can't let him be alone. Maggie's in New York with Negan, forced into an uneasy partnership with the man who killed Glenn, trying to save her son from a new threat. They're the unkillable, the survivors who've made it through everything, but survival's cost them everything too. They're alive, but at what cost? They've lost everyone they loved. They've buried their humanity, piece by piece. They're still fighting, but it's not clear what they're fighting for anymore. Maybe just the habit of it. Maybe because they don't know how to stop. The theory here is that The Walking Dead's legacy is that survival is its own tragedy. The show doesn't end with the apocalypse being solved, with a cure, with the dead staying dead. It just ends with the survivors still surviving, still struggling, still carrying the weight. And the next generation, Judith, RJ, Coco, they're inheriting that weight, that cycle, that endless fight. The pattern doesn't end. It just repeats. And every major death, from Jim to Rosita, was necessary to protect what's left. Or was it? Because the people left alive are traumatized, isolated, haunted. The world's safer, maybe, but the people who made it safe are broken. And the question the show leaves us with, the one it doesn't answer, is, was it worth it? Did survival justify the cost? Or did the fight to stay alive just hollow everyone out until survival was the only thing left? The empty chairs at the table are filled now, but with people carrying the ghosts of everyone who used to sit there. And maybe that's all survival ever is in The Walking Dead. The weight of the dead carried by the living, the endless cycle of loss and endurance, the quiet tragedy of staying alive when everyone you loved is gone. And the show's final message, whispered through every death, every loss, every empty chair: survival is not the same as living, but it's all we have, and so we carry. We're back at Alexandria's council table now, the one from the season 11 finale, the one I started with. The chairs are filled with new faces: Judith, Aaron, Gabriel, people who survived. But if you look closely, you can still see the empty spaces, the weight of everyone who didn't make it. Glenn's seat, where he used to plan supply runs and joke with Maggie. Abraham's seat, where he'd lean back and offer blunt, honest advice. Sasha's seat, where she'd weigh strategy with quiet intelligence. Tara's seat, where she'd smile and make everyone feel a little less afraid. They're not physically empty. People are sitting there now, but they feel empty because every chair carries a memory, a ghost, a reminder of what survival cost. And maybe that's the answer, or at least part of it. The deaths weren't random. They were lessons, patterns, the price of staying alive in a world that punishes hope and hesitation. Every major death taught the group something: that trust is dangerous, that mercy gets you killed, that happiness makes you a target, that survival requires choices that haunt you forever. And the people left sitting at that table, the survivors, they're the ones who learned those lessons and are still here, carrying the weight of everyone who didn't. They didn't survive because they were stronger or smarter or more deserving. They survived because they were willing to become whatever the world demanded, to bury their idealism, to carry the dead with them every single day. Did the deaths protect the future or just hollow out the present? The world's safer now. Alexandria's still standing. The Commonwealth's reformed. Judith and RJ are growing up in a place that looks almost normal, where they don't have to fight every day, where they have a chance at something better. And that's because of the people who died. Glenn's mercy, Carl's hope, Rosita's sacrifice, they all contributed to this fragile safety, this chance at rebuilding. But the people who made it possible aren't here to see it. They're gone, and the ones who remain are broken by the weight of what it took. So maybe both are true. Maybe the deaths did protect the future, and maybe they did hollow out the present. Maybe survival is always both, a victory and a tragedy, an ending and a continuation, a reason to keep going and a reminder of everything you lost along the way. There's one empty chair left at the table. Not physically, someone's probably sitting there, but symbolically, there's always one more seat waiting, one more person the pattern will claim. Because the cycle doesn't end. The show's final message, whispered through every death, is that survival is never finished. There's always another threat, another loss, another choice that will cost someone their life. And the people at the table, they know this. They've seen the pattern. They've filled the empty chairs and watched new ones appear. And they keep going anyway. Because that's what survival is. The refusal to give up even when the weight feels unbearable, even when the empty chairs outnumber the filled ones, even when you're not sure what you're fighting for anymore. You just keep going. You carry the dead. You honor their memory by staying alive. And maybe, just maybe, you build something that lasts a little longer than you did. That's the hope. Anyway, that's the fragile, impossible hope that keeps the survivors going. And as the camera pulls away from Alexandria's council table, from the filled and empty chairs, from the ghosts and the living, one question lingers. Who's next? Who will fill that last empty chair? And what will their death teach the ones left behind? The pattern doesn't end. It just cycles. And we're still watching, still carrying, still hoping that maybe this time survival will mean something more than just staying alive.